Some of the best tools out there, they aren't born in some sterile tech lab. Nope, they're usually forged from one person's, well, obsession. And today, we're going to dive into the super unlikely origin story of Google's NotebookLM. It's a tool that didn't start with a team of engineers, but with a single writer who was just trying to solve a very personal and honestly, a very human problem. But let me start with a question for you. Seriously, think about it. All the books you've ever read, the articles you've highlighted, all those random ideas you've had. If you could, how would you search that personal universe of knowledge? Right? How would you dig up those connections you made years ago and have totally forgotten? Because that exact problem, that's where this whole story begins. Okay, so let's meet our main character, Steven Johnson. For 20 years, this guy wasn't just writing books. He was meticulously building this private library of ideas, collecting quotes from pretty much everything he read. And for him, this wasn't just research. He called it an incredible snapshot of the ideas that literally shaped who he is as a writer. And we are not talking about a small hobby here. By the time Google enters the picture, his personal collection had over 8,000 quotes. That's a massive 2 million word document of his entire intellectual journey. So the challenge was, what do you do with that? How do you make this deeply personal mountain of knowledge useful again? How do you ask it questions and have it surprise you with things you forgot you even knew? Well, this obsession with managing his own brain, basically, it led him down a really strange path. I mean, it is not every day that a professional author gets a call from Google saying, hey, want to come build a brand new product with us? Johnson's background is really the key to this whole thing. He wasn't a software developer. He's an author who'd spent his entire career using tech to help him think better. He was an early adopter of all these niche tools, and then he writes this really important article about language models right before they just exploded into the mainstream. And that article, it got the attention of Google Labs, who literally cold called him with this wild idea, come and help us build the tool that you've been dreaming about your whole life. But in the early days, you gotta understand, there was a lot of skepticism. His future boss, a guy named Clay Bavor, basically told him, yes, but Steven, you have to remember, we are not normal. Most people are not walking around with 8,000 quotes. I mean, was building a tool for such a specific, kind of weird user, was that really a good idea? And this led to a completely counterintuitive discovery. It turned out that by focusing so intensely on solving this one not normal person's very deep, very specific problem, they accidentally created a tool that's fundamentally useful for any knowledge worker. I mean, think about it. Whether you're a student with a semester of readings, a lawyer with case files, or a filmmaker with interview transcripts, we all have our own version of those 8,000 quotes. So this really unique origin story ended up shaping the team's entire philosophy. Right from the very beginning, they made a choice that was honestly incredibly risky, but also totally visionary. They decided they were going to design software for an AI that didn't even exist yet. And this philosophy is built on one core concept called source grounding. It's pretty simple, actually. Unlike a chatbot that knows about the entire internet, NotebookLM is designed to become an expert only on the documents you give it. That's it. This basically limits the AI's world to your information, which is huge because it stops it from making stuff up and makes sure its answers are always faithful to your material. But here's the gamble. When they started this back in 2022, the AI models just couldn't do this, not effectively. The context windows, that's kind of like the AI's short-term memory, they were tiny. Johnson even admits that for the first year, the product was, in his words, kind of broken. They were building an application and just waiting, hoping the underlying technology would eventually catch up to their dream. And that moment, it finally came in the spring of 2024. That's when they switched over to Google's Gemini 1.5 Pro model. Johnson remembers a colleague just seeing him in the hallway and saying, "Steven, Notebook finally works." And that was it. That was the breakthrough. The moment the AI finally became powerful enough to make that original, ambitious vision a reality. Now, here's a fun twist. One of NotebookLM's most popular features today was actually a complete accident. It came from a totally separate project that seemed like the exact opposite of what the team was trying to do. So to get what happened next, you have to imagine this clash of styles. Johnson had created this super strict house style for NotebookLM's AI. It was supposed to be austere, scholarly, and he was adamant that it should never pretend to be your friend. Meanwhile, another team at Google Labs had this other project for generating AI podcasts, and their style was, well, the opposite. Their demo had this over-the-top host named Captain Kinetic teaching physics. So, get this. Just 8 days before Google's massive annual conference, a last-minute decision comes down from on high. Merge the podcast feature into NotebookLM. Johnson's first reaction was basically, this is a terrible idea. It violated their entire house style. But then he had this realization. Humans have learned by listening to other people talk for hundreds of thousands of years. Reading is actually a pretty new invention. So if the goal is to help people understand things, turning their documents into a conversation actually made perfect sense. They just had to dial down the personalities a little bit. So no more Captain Kinetic. And the result? The feature just took off in a way nobody expected. It was this powerful lesson that, hey, sometimes your first instincts are totally wrong, and real innovation often happens in that messy space where different ideas crash into each other. So, how can you actually use this philosophy for yourself? It's really about more than just summarizing documents. It's about amplifying your own knowledge, your own curiosity. The team eventually came up with this really simple but powerful slogan that just captures the whole point of the tool. Make anything interesting. The AI's job is to take whatever you feed it, even if it's super dense or dry, and pull out the most compelling, most interesting bits for you. And here's a query that just leverages this perfectly. Instead of a simple keyword search, try asking it this. What are the most surprising things in this document? See, because AI models are fundamentally prediction engines, they have this weirdly sophisticated sense of what's surprising, what deviates from the expected pattern. It's a type of analysis that was just impossible before this. Okay, for our last pro tip, this one is a real power user move. You can write your own notes inside the tool, right? But by default, the AI can't see them. But if you use the Convert Note to Source feature, you're basically making your own thoughts part of the knowledge base. The AI can then see not only what you've read, but what you think about what you've read. And that leads to much deeper, much more personalized insights. It's a game changer. All right, let's wrap this up by zooming out and looking at the bigger picture here, because this isn't just about a single tool. It really hints at a fundamental shift in how we might interact with all kinds of information in the very near future. The ultimate vision here, it goes way beyond just being a research tool. Stephen Johnson imagines NotebookLM as a whole new kind of publishing platform. Just think about it. What if the next book you buy isn't just static text on a page, but a dynamic notebook you can query, debate, and literally have a conversation with? It's a future where information is no longer just something we consume, but something we can actually engage with in a real dialogue. The only question left is, what would you ask first?